Late on the night of September 19th, 1961, a 41-year-old child welfare worker by the name of Barney Hill and her 39-year-old husband Barney were traveling home after a pleasant vacation in southern Canada. They were traveling along Interstate Route 3, which cuts through the White Mountain of New Hampshire, on the long journey home to New England. For quite a while, the Hills had been puzzled by the white star that seemed to be tailing them. Barney, being skeptical by nature, thought it may be a plane heading towards Montreal. Traffic was very scarce on the highway, and the couple decided to stop to allow their dog Dulcie to have some exercise. And then the rest is history. In a moment, Linda Moulton Howe with the incredible story of Betty and Barney Hill. Well, once a month, Linda Moulton Howe joins us with her special report, and tonight you've got it, Andy. Linda Moulton Howe, the Emmy Award-winning television producer, investigative reporter, author. She goes directly to the people at the forefront of science and environmental challenges. Of course, her website, earthfiles.com. Always pay a daily visit to that to get some latest information. Linda Moulton Howe. Hey, Linda, happy Labor Day to you.
Well, hi, George. I'm telling you, this Betty and Barney Hill case that's been around now for more than 40 years, the more that you learn about it, the more incredible it becomes.
I've been so anxious to get this report from you because when I was a kid reporter, 21, 22 years old, I interviewed Dr. Simon.
Right.
The person who hypnotized them, and I can't find the tapes anymore, Linda, so I'm looking forward to this.
Well, we have some hypnosis excerpts tonight, and when I realized that I had never heard anything, really, wasn't even thinking about something from outer space coming to Earth and actually interacting with people until 1975, and I watched that TV program that was called The UFO Incident, and it was sort of a docudrama reenactment of this alleged UFO and non-human encounter that Betty and Barney Hill described in the White Mountains of New Hampshire on September 19th to the 20th of 1961. That's 46 years ago. Well, that TV show so provoked my interest that I read the book that it was based on, An Interrupted Journey by John Fuller. And that book came out first in 1966 in cooperation with Betty and Barney Hill and the Boston psychiatrist you interviewed, Benjamin Simon, M.D., from Boston. Dr. Simon did 11 hypnosis sessions with Betty and Barney, beginning on February 22nd, 1964, and ending 4 months later on June 27th, 1964. Quite a bit of time had transpired from September of 61. Well, the reason that the Hills asked Dr. Simon for help was Barney's physical and mental suffering and deterioration after that September 1961 encounter. So Dr. Simon began the first 2 hypnosis sessions with Barney, who was very soft-spoken and repressed. And as a reality check on Barney's fear and panic that cat-eyed, gray-skinned beings had literally captured the couple in the New Hampshire mountains, Dr. Simon also hypnotized Betty. And those hypnosis tapes recorded by Dr. Simon were the heart of a research project by Betty's niece, Kathleen Marden. Kathy compared the separate hypnosis sessions and traveled the route herself from Franconia Ridge and Indian Head in the White Mountains to the Hills home in Portsmouth. Kathy also had her own memories of hearing and watching her aunt and uncle talk about the ordeal until Barney's unfortunate and early death in 1969. Betty died in 2004. Kathy asked longtime UFO investigator and nuclear scientist Stanton Friedman to help her create a book that has just been released and is entitled Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience, the true story of the world's first documented alien abduction. And that title comes from Barney's hypnosis as he watched a cat-eyed humanoid through binoculars standing at a backlighted window on this aerial disc that was only about 50 feet in the air. In his mind, Barney was mentally warned not to reach for the gun that he knew was in his pocket. And then Barney felt that he and Betty were going to be captured by the cat-eyed being. Recently, I asked Kathleen what her aunt and uncle consciously remembered from that mountain encounter and asked if I could share with the Coast and Earth Files audiences some excerpts from that original 1964 series of hypnosis sessions with Dr. Benjamin Simon. She agreed. Barney's voice is very soft on these 44-year-old tapes, and in contrast, Betty was so emotional that at points her voice dissolves into sobs and heavy breathing so much you can't understand what she was saying. So I have edited much of that out so that tonight on Coast we can hear the content. We will begin with Kathleen Martin, followed by voices of Betty and Barney Hill from 40-some years ago.
Here we go.
They had a conscious memory of having this spinning, lighted craft come within 1,000 feet of them in Franconia Notch. It was traveling in a stair-step pattern. It was bouncing forward and then receding and obviously spinning the entire time. When they were south of Franconia Notch in the area of Indian Head, Barney decided that he wanted to pull over to the side of the road to get a better look at this craft. The craft suddenly shifted ahead of them and hovered only 80 to 100 feet above their vehicle and just to the right of it. Barney at that point was forced to stop the car, and he stopped it directly in the center of the road. He took the binoculars, exited the vehicle, looked at it through the binoculars as it hovered above the car, and it was only 80 to 100 feet above. His arms were jiggling, so he stepped away from the car. Betty, at that time, was observing the craft through the car window. It had stopped spinning. It was a saucer-shaped craft. It had a double row of windows, and there was a bright blue-white light coming from behind those windows. The craft then, in an arc-like fashion, glided to the adjacent field, which was to Barney's left. He walked into that field to observe the craft through binoculars while Betty remained in the car watching for oncoming traffic. When he was in the field, the craft then descended lower to within what he estimated was about 50 feet from him. He looked up at it through binoculars and observed beings standing in the windows. Very rapidly, all of them at once, except for one who remained in the window, turned and moved toward some type of panel. Red lights started to telescope out of each side of this craft on what appeared to be very short, bat-like fin-type wings. And something started to drop down from the bottom of the craft. The being in the window continued to look at Barney and was terribly frightening. Barney felt that they were about to carry out some type of plan, and he said that it was the precision of their movement that frightened him so badly. He attempted to pull the binoculars from his eyes, but he couldn't do so. He attempted to reach for his gun, but his arms would not move to his coat pocket. And he felt that he was in the process of losing his ability to take self-initiated action, that he was coming under the control of this being who was somehow communicating to him to stay where he was and keep looking, that no harm would come to him. At that point, Barney was terrified and felt that he was about to be captured, but he said on the tapes he didn't know what they were going to capture him for. And he managed to pull the binoculars down away from his face and to run, either laughing or crying hysterically, Betty wasn't sure which, back to the car and informed Betty that he thought they were about to be captured. He put the car into first gear, swiftly took off down U.S. Highway Route 3. When they were within just a few blocks, they heard a series